I am Flavia Zimmerman for the Australian Institute of International Affairs in Western Australia, and today we have with us UWA Professor Mark Beeson. We'll be discussing the new book that Mark has co-edited that is entitled Navigating the New International Disorder. Thank you for having with us, Mark.
My pleasure.
Mark, could you please give us an overview of what would be the new international disorder and how it impacts Australian foreign policy and strategic thinking in the region?
Yes, it's a good question. It's a very complicated question, but there's a lot of things going on in the world, and I think if you pick up a daily paper on any random day, there's always some headline or other about some disturbance somewhere in the world, and increasingly there are things happening in our part of the world as well, which I think make people think that there's something new and distinctive and different about the times that we live in. And on one level, I mean, people have probably always thought the time they live in is the most distinctive and interesting and different to anything that's ever gone before. But I think there are reasons for thinking that there are things happening in the world today that are qualitatively different to some of the things that happened, say, 30 or 40 years ago, when the world seemed to be more or less frozen in place by the Cold War and a bilateral strategic structure. Those things have changed and are continuing to change, and it's not clear what's going to replace them. But these big systemic changes are happening at a time when there are other major challenges that we collectively need to face as human beings and as part of the world's citizens, and things like the environment being the most obvious, but also global inequality, refugee crises, general crises of political authority. There are a whole range of different things that people are pretty familiar with now, I think, that people think make this particular era a bit different to some of the ones that have gone before, certainly since the Second World War at least anyway.
Thank you, Mark. And can you please explain the main regional challenges for Australia with the rise of China and the relative decline in American power in the world?
Sure. Well, I think most people have grown up and most people who are alive today haven't ever known a different system other than one that's been dominated by the United States. And even critics, I think, critics of the United States foreign policy and some of the institutions it established after the Second World War, we have to concede that the American system, or American dominance, or leadership, or hegemony, depending on what you want to call it, it provided a degree of stability and predictability to the international system. Now, sometimes that wasn't always welcomed by some people, particularly people who are on the wrong side of the Iron Curtain during the Cold War. But it did provide a certain degree of stability, and it also provided a particular sort of international order and set of institutions that govern that order, from which a lot of people, including China, ironically, benefited. And one of the ironic and surprising things about American dominance in the post-war period is it actually was instrumental in creating a couple of formidable challenges to America's preeminent position. First, Japan, and people kind of forget about that now because it happened in the 1980s, but many people thought that Japan was going to be the biggest economy in the world and the principal threat to American dominance. But more recently, since the 1990s, and that's pretty recent as well, and particularly since the 2000s, China's emerged from almost nowhere by comparative standards and become the second biggest economy in the world, or even the biggest, depending on how you measure it. But very soon it will be the biggest economy in the world. And that's going to have major implications for not just the relationship between China and America, which will be unambiguously the two most powerful and important countries in the world, but for everybody else as well. So particularly for our part of the world, I think this is likely to be a major focus of attention for, obviously, China, but also for the United States. And I think in Barack Obama's last term, he famously inaugurated the pivot to Asia. And that was an expression, I think, of American realization that their position as the most powerful and influential country in this part of the world was no longer as clear and unchallenged as it had been. And there was another really formidable challenger emerging in the form of China. And that has the potential, I think, to really transform certainly this part of the world, the Asia-Pacific region or East Asia, but more generally the world as well, I think.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for being with us. For more information, please visit our website, www.internationalaffairs.org.au. Thank you very much.